From Kern Government Television, welcome to this week's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting, originating from the County Administrative Center located at 1115 Truxtun Avenue, Bakersfield, California. Kern County's vision is to create and maintain a customer-centered county government designed to garner the confidence, support, and trust of the people we serve. Today's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting will convene momentarily.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Tuesday afternoon meeting of the Kern County Board of Supervisors on this, the 12th day of June, 2018. The board will reconvene. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Supervisor Gleason?
Here.
Supervisor Scribner?
Here.
Supervisor Maggard?
Here.
Supervisor Couch?
Here.
Supervisor Perez?
Mr. Nations, could you please give us a report on actions taken in closed session?
Yes. The board did meet in closed session as reflected in the morning agenda. It met in all of the agendized items, and there are no publicly reportable actions taken in any of the items 36 through 43.
Thank you, Mr. Nations. We will deal first this afternoon with our consent agenda. Consent items are indicated with a C or a CA above the item that's on the agenda number, the agenda item number. These items are considered to be routine and non-controversial by staff, so they have been suggested to us to be voted on in one sweeping motion over all the items on consent. If a member of the public has a question about or a comment about one of those items, I will offer you an opportunity to ask that question or make that comment here in just a moment. And then it'll be up to the board to decide if they want to pull any item from the consent calendar. So are there any members of the public? Oh, let me first tell you what's on consent. Beginning on page 2 of this afternoon's agenda, item number 4. On page 3, all the items 5 through 10. On page 4, all the items 11 through 16. On page 5, all the items 17 through 24. And on page 6, items 25 through 31. And on page 7, items 32 through 36. Are there any members of the public that would like to ask a question or make a comment about one of those items? Please feel free to come forward. Good afternoon, Mr. Fluhart. Could you give us your name for the record?
Yes, David Fluhart, Havilah, 1st District. So this is going to be kind of flippant, and please bear with me. But anyways, consent agenda item number 26 and 27 is what I want to talk about. And sometimes, you know, I don't read the material behind it. You know, you go to the websites there, you can click on it and read about it. Sometimes I don't read it because the general description is just so much nicer sounding than the reality. And number 26 refers to the basically, Golden Empire Affordable Housing Incorporated, Green Gardens, and I guess in connection with behavioral health and resource and recovery services. And you know, at some point when we get done with rescheduling marijuana and, you know, adjusting a few things, you know, that's going to be a totally different description. And then number 27 is basically the adult homeless shelter, you know, having worked with the county parks and keeping up the parks. And that's just, you know, that field of resource could be expanded so much in progressively good ways. And, you know, when I read it, I can just imagine the parallel world, and I gotta apologize. Sometimes I don't read them just for that, so I can imagine what it could be like in the future.
You don't read them so that you can imagine them.
Yes, you guys don't crush my dreams.
You're right at.
But yeah, that federal rescheduling blocks a lot of grants and a lot of opportunities to access because of that A schedule. So anyways, I just wanted to bring those up and, you know, push with the splendid possibility that we could be. And that's basically it. I didn't really follow my notes very well, so I hope I didn't skip something super important to say. But anyways, have a good day. See you later.
Thank you, Mr. Fluhart. Thank you. Mr. Fox, will you give us your name for the record, please?
I'd like to pull 15 or talk about 15.
First, Mr. Fox, give us your name for the record and then tell us what your question is,
Yeah, I'm
please.
Dennis Fox.
And what is your question about item 15?
15.
What is your question, sir?
Well, it has to do, it's mainly a name change for one company who is a consultant for you.
Item number 15. Let me help you, okay? Item number 15 is a proposed consent to an assignment and transfer of an agreement with AMEC Foster Wheeler Environmental and Infrastructure to Wood Environmental Infrastructure. So what is your question about that, sir?
Well, then basically, could it be amended, since you're doing this stuff, the contract with them to do a few things that could be done? They're doing stormwater, and the stormwater, and we're also getting into the groundwater stuff coming up. Change some of the stormwater, which is flooding Lamont, into the groundwater. I noticed their address is appropriately on Alluvial Avenue. That would be up there. That would be for something for them to do. And also perhaps take a look at the effects of the fires that are having on the stormwater that goes into Isabella and stuff. I think this might be a time to take a look at it, and whatever else you think they might want to put in there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fox. Any other members of the public wish to ask a question or make a comment to us about an item on consent? Okay, I'll return to the board. Any member of the board want to pull an item for separate consideration or make a question or comment, or is there a motion to proceed with the consent calendar as proposed?
I'll move approval of the consent calendar.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved, 4 ayes, 1 absent. Supervisor Perez.
Thank you. On page 2 of our agenda, item number 1 is an opportunity for the public to make a presentation or comment to us about any matter that is not otherwise on our agenda this afternoon. And I understand there are 2 gentlemen who might be interested, Eddie Lane here in the front row and Mr. Eric Giroux. There, Mr. Giroux, okay. Well, let's let Mr. Lane go first, then we'll let Mr. Giroux go, and then if any other people would like to join us, they can. We have 2 minutes for each person to be able to make a presentation. Mr. Lane, how are you this afternoon?
I'm fine, thank you. I'd like to pass out a letter. This one's for you and for the board members.
And Mr. Lane, could you give us your name officially for the record?
My name's Eddie Lane, and I live at 17150 Advantage Point Court. I'm about a mile from Ming Lake, so I'm pretty familiar with what goes on at Ming Lake. I had an opportunity to review these issues with the Recreation Commission on the 23rd of May, and I'd like to bring them to the attention of the board. By background, I've spent last 5 summers working in either National Park or National Forest, so I am familiar with the rules of the park and the forest, and so happens that I found out recently that I live very near what's called, this is the county map, the Kern River County Park. And the Kern River County Park includes Ming Lake, it includes a golf course and a lot of other areas near the river. Because of the proximity, of course, I watch what goes on there. In mid-March, there was some grading that went on, and there were 3 areas that were graded in what is the park. Total area about 5 acres. When I talked to the commission, I showed them what I'm going to show you now. When the grading was done, the areas that were graded mainly had a little grass cover on top of them, only a few inches. But the grass kept the soil more or less compacted. After it was done, it became silt. And my principal issue has to do with valley fever. My understanding is that there are requirements from the local Air Resources Board that if grading is done, there must be some kind of mitigation. What you have in the pictures that I provided are pictures of the areas that were graded, including shrubs that were put into piles, which are currently fire hazards, as well as easements that were created, possibly without permits. But the primary concern I have has to do with possibility of those spores getting into the air. I have a personal situation where I was fossiling with somebody a few years ago, about 2 miles up on Rancheria Road, and her little granddaughter, who was 11 or 12, got valley fever. almost directly attributable to that time out there. So I'm asking that the board do what you can to see to it that water trucks or whatever are provided in that area until the rainy season so as to mitigate that effect. Also, it so happened Bill Cooper was in the audience. Bill Cooper is a longtime member of the Kern River Parkway Foundation. All that needed to be done was to bring in a mower and mow the grass. We didn't have to have silt down there. We could have just mowed that. So there's more here. You've got the pictures. I'm glad to answer any questions. And thank you for this opportunity.
Mr. Lane, thank you for coming forward this morning. Mr. Lane and I took, along with a couple of others, a walking tour along the river, just up the river from Hart Park the other day. Not Hart Park, from Lake Mean. And it's a beautiful area along there. He pointed out to me that there's another spot. One of these looks a little bit like it, but because it looks like the lake is there. But between the entrance to Lake Mean and on the east end of the lake where the boat drags stage, there's an area just to the east of there where kind of a pile of this, the residual from this has been stacked up, and it is left just open soil there, so it's given to causing a lot of dust. I think that's one of the areas that he's concerned about. There's another interesting thing that's happened, and that is that when the boat drags recently occurred, something was different. I see the boat drags, you know, that happens a number of times a year, and I'm on that road all the time on my bike, and usually it's not an issue. But this particular time, as the boats and the trailers were leaving the lake, a great deal of mud was put out onto the road, and that not only is it there's now mud all over the road, but that will dry and cause more dust. So those are a couple areas where we might look and see if we might do something to mitigate that, and is there a binding agent we should put on that dust. So I appreciate you bringing that to our attention.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. There is a new vigor, a new level of enthusiasm at our Parks Commission meetings, and I'm looking forward to some of the recommendations that are going to come to us from that. Some good things are in store for us, I think, in that regard. Next is Mr. Giroux. Good afternoon, sir. Could you give us your name for the record, please?
Eric Giroux. Good afternoon, Honorable Chairman, Board, Letitia. Nice to see you again, Letitia, as always, at these meetings. I just wanted to say one thing related to a previous meeting. There was a pretty productive discussion on homelessness in Kern County, and I wanted to let you know there's a really fascinating, wonderful program going on that VA holds every summer called Operation Stand Down. There are many of these going on across the state. Unfortunately, not one in Kern County, but it's something you could kind of put on your radar for future reference and maybe incorporate local services with that. The main reason I came to speak to you is once again to ask you to endorse the federal amicus brief on SB 54 on opting out of sanctuary state. Since I was last here, I've been to about a dozen city council meetings across the state, and every one of them is just a complete clean sweep. Everybody wants out of this. The votes are unanimous. There's no debate. What this is, I just want to be clear, this is I'm asking Kern County to join the federal amicus brief. You don't have to do anything. It doesn't create an obligation of any kind. You're just basically cutting and pasting and saying, yeah, we want to be a part of this as well and inform the federal government that we want out of this. You did take an oath. I took an oath. You took an oath. We all took an oath to uphold the Constitution. And, you know, this is kind of what it's all about. All enemies, foreign and domestic. You've really got to get your arms around this. Just because Kevin De Leon and Javier Becerra abused their oath, you know, we still have to uphold ours as Americans. You know, people ask why we're doing this, and you guys at the council, at the city and county level, you're really the last line of defense. So I would respectfully ask you to instruct your council to have Kern County join the federal amicus brief against SB 54. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Giroux. I want to tell you that you would have a seat. I just want to explain a couple things to you. We do have a stand down in Kern County. It's been ongoing for several years. It used to be several days long. Now it's 1 day long. There's a significant effort at the stand down to help particularly homeless vets transition into home
living circumstances. They have a court there that helps them resolve any outstanding warrants and issues they have, which has been very, very helpful. And they have a great deal of effort going into providing social services, which include up to and including mental health services that are there. So that's a very robust thing that we already do here in Kern County. I'd like to have Mark Nations join me here in a second about this, but I want to walk you through a couple things that have happened about the sanctuary state effort. There is, we were the first county, it ended up that 2 counties opposed the Senate bill, the SB 54, thank you, the sanctuary state bill. We were one of only 2 counties that did that. We were the first one. We went to the governor's office and explained, sent a delegation there, which included Supervisor Scrivener. He was very, very effective when we went there and did that. The first list of laws that that bill called for that would allow local authorities to speak with federal authorities was limited to 3 different kinds of crimes. Through our efforts of lobbying, that grew from 3 crimes to over 800 crimes. The bill, as it ended up being voted upon, was substantially improved by the efforts of this board, and particularly thanks to the hard work of Supervisor Scrivener to go there and do that. Even though they improved it significantly, they didn't improve it enough for us to support it, and 4 of us voted to oppose it then. What we're seeing now in San Diego and Orange County and a few other places is, frankly, I think a bit too little too late. It's unfortunate that they didn't join us at the outset, and that sanctuary bill might have been moderated even more than it was. But we led the effort to do that in California. We have explored what possibilities there are about joining in these lawsuits, and this amicus brief, although it sounds to be something of significance, there are other opinions than the way it's been portrayed as to how effective it is and whether or not we even have the standing to file one. But it only affects, the amicus briefs only affect these efforts once the case is settled and an appeal is filed, and I'd like Mr. Nations to give us a better explanation of that. But I think it's an inadequate description, excuse me, an inadequate description of what we here in Kern County have done, because I think, frankly, we led the way in opposing the sanctuary state effort. Mr. Nations, could you please explain the extent of what these amicus briefs are that are being filed, and just lightly touch, if you don't mind, on the standing of counties to join in, but more importantly, can you explain, for the public's benefit, you can do it better than I, why these are of little, if any, substance at this point?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. An amicus brief means a friend of the court brief, and they are filed with leave of court if the court feels that it needs the point of view of people who may be impacted by a case in front of it, but who do not have standing to be a party to the case. I am not aware at this point of any amicus briefs or other filings being made in the case. I will note that the case of United States versus California has been sealed, and so it is difficult to find out what exactly is being filed in the case. I do know they have a hearing pertaining to a proposed restraining order, I believe on the 20th of June. And so we would have the ability to apply for leave to file an amicus brief. The court is not bound by anything that is said in them. They use them in cases typically to learn. And so if this board were to direct this office to join in an amicus brief at such time as one is filed, we certainly would have the legal ability to do that.
And Mr. Alsop, you provided, or you did a bit of research into this as well. Is there any comments that you might add?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, no, I think you said it well. I think that if more of California cities and counties were involved with this from the get-go, when it really mattered most, when the legislature was being debated, when the legislation was being debated in Sacramento, I think, not sure what would have happened. The bill could have been modified, as you said, even more, or the status could have somehow been changed and been different than what ultimately occurred. So I would say that. I would also agree with, not being an attorney, but agree with what Mr. Nation said. Majority of you voted to oppose that bill. You joined the California State Sheriff's Association and other law enforcement associations, predominantly due to the list of crimes, or the lack of crimes that were mentioned in the bill. That list was expanded thanks in part to your lobbying efforts. We, as you know, went to Sacramento. Supervisor Scrivener, Supervisor Perez, and some staff went to Sacramento, met with the governor's office, met with Mr. De Leon, met with others on the bill. And it resulted, I believe, in the bill being expanded, which I think was an improvement based on your board's position. And we're a general law county, I would say. We've received several communications from county residents suggesting that we simply ignore this law. And also join the federal government's lawsuit against California's sanctuary policies. It's important to understand that as a general law county and as a political subdivision of the state, we are bound by and obligated under the Constitution of the state of California to follow state law, even if a majority of our board strongly disagrees with it, as is the case with SB 54. You simply don't have the authority to opt out of this or any other statutes currently being challenged by the federal government, even if you wanted to. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope that provides some background about, it isn't that we haven't done anything. We've been very active in it. So, are there any other members of the public that would like to talk to us about a matter that is not otherwise on our agenda this afternoon? Mr. Fleur, did you already speak once during this time?
No, I spoke on the consent agenda.
Please feel free to join us again, Mr. Fluhart.
David Fluhart, Havilah, 1st District. Yesterday morning, the Standing Committee of Health and Human Services met, and of course, it was a good discussion and whatnot. Basically, you guys, that committee is supposed to make suggestions to the board. That might be a little bit difficult, and I know I made a few suggestions. I forgot one. Kind of hard to. Anyways, maybe some employee training on sensitivity towards generational thoughts or language or something. Basically, earlier, in the month, I'd tried to find out some information about a 96-acre property just south of Lerdo that's going to go for bid on lease. And I was told no, and I was told I'm never going to sign that paperwork, and you're never going to grow your dope on county land, and just, it hurt my feelings. And it just kind of slowed me down my enthusiasm, so I didn't put in the bid or anything, but there's a whole bunch of dreams and great thoughts towards a new probation pilot program or something out there, around growing therapy and whatnot. And I don't know. Hopefully we're going in a different direction, and we'd try and reorganize in a better way towards things. And, I like to make comments, and like this morning, the probation department was offering $5 million bid on community partnership programs and whatnot. I'd love to comment on it, but if he's standing right there, I don't want him yelling at me, no, we're never going to sign that and get out of here and blah, blah, blah. Anyways, it'd be kind of embarrassing, and I don't even want to talk about if I ever had to talk to the sheriff. Anyways, yeah, just maybe a little bit of sensitivity training for the employees. Just don't call it dope. That's definitely a generational thing, and it's just hurts the ears. All right, that's all. Thank you, and have a good day.
Any other members of the public wish to make comment to us this afternoon? Okay, then we'll close the opportunity for the public presentations and go to the board. Any members of the board want to make a presentation or an announcement this afternoon? Don't see anyone. We now have then item number 3 is the only item off of consent this afternoon. and it is a request from Robert Gonzalez by Porter & Associates to change the permitted use of some property located at 4840 East Brundage Lane. Ms. Oviatt, I understand we're going to defer this to a subsequent meeting. Could you please give us a brief explanation and how that will go about?
Chairman Maggers, members of the board, we have discussed this with the applicant. This is in the 5th District, and we are asking this be continued to June 19th, which is next week, and we have provided you with the staff report.
Thank you very much. Any members of the public wish to make comment about item number 3? Mr. Fluhart.
Yeah, I was not really, I was interested in the variance or the changing of the code compliance or whatever to allow this, and obviously it's not happening today, but I already know if I ask code compliance for a variance, the answer is no. But anyways, I'm just kind of making a joke, guys. Meeting's almost over. Have a good weekend.
Thank you. Any other members of the public wish to make comment about item number 3? Okay, I'll close the public hearing then, and the requested action is for us to defer this item to June 19, when it will be heard in the afternoon session.
So moved.
Thank you very much. Is there a second to do that? Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved, 4 ayes, 1 absent. Supervisor Perez.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us this afternoon, and we'll look forward to seeing you again next Tuesday at 9 a.m. in these chambers. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Without objection, so ordered. Thank you very much. See you guys next week.
Of syphilis in all of California. Pregnant women with syphilis can pass it to their baby, and without treatment, your baby can suffer from very serious health problems or even die.